What if every Merrick family home was destined to burn and no one knows why? Stay tuned to uncover the fiery curse that defies time. Welcome to Secrets of History, where the past unveils its darkest mysteries. The first was a farmhouse. Remote. Peaceful. Until one cold October night in 1782, when it burned so completely that even the family nameplate above the door turned to ash. They said it was an accident. But no one ever found the cause. And then it happened again. Different home. Different century. Same family. The Merricks. Over generations, across oceans, and through time, their homes went up in flames, always without warning. Always without survivors. Entire branches of the family tree blackened out, one by one, like dry leaves set alight by an invisible hand. Birth records, letters, wills all erased in the same exact way, fire. In some cases, neighbors claimed the blaze moved too fast. Others swore they heard no screams. Only the crackle. As if the flames were rehearsed. Some families passed down silver. Stories. Land. The Merricks passed down nothing, because nothing ever survived. There were no confessions. No motives. No final diary entries clutched in a soot-covered hand. Just scorched portraits, melted wedding rings, and the smell of smoke that seemed to cling to the ground long after the ruins were cleared. People stopped asking questions. Maybe they were afraid of what they'd find. Or maybe they already knew. Because when the same fire keeps finding the same name for over 200 years, you have to wonder, was it a coincidence? Or was the Merrick family always meant to burn? Opening with an eerie, unexplained fire immediately sets the tone for the story and signals to the audience that this isn't just about flames, it's about something far more disturbing. The fire becomes more than a physical event, it becomes a harbinger, a symbol, a question that no one seems able or willing to answer. There's power in starting with destruction, but not just any destruction, one that arrives without reason, without warning, and without logic. A blaze that consumes an entire home in minutes while leaving behind no evidence of what caused it is deeply unsettling. It challenges the comfort of explanation. And that's the point. What made the flames move so fast, and why were there no screams? Don't miss the next haunting detail. From the first sentence, the fire should feel alive. The language should suggest movement, intent, silence. No sirens. No cries for help. Just the slow, quiet hiss of heat moving through timber and walls. It's not just about what's burning, it's about how wrong it feels that it's happening at all. By starting the story with a fire that no one sees coming and no one understands, the audience is immediately thrust into a space of fear and confusion. They know what they're witnessing shouldn't be possible, and that unease becomes the foundation for everything that follows. This opening moment also works because it introduces loss without context. A home is gone. A family is missing. But we don't know who they were yet, or why it matters. This allows the mystery to unfold in layers. The audience will lean in, not just because a tragedy occurred, but because they're not being told why it happened. This kind of narrative delay creates tension. It forces people to listen closely, to absorb the little details, the smell of smoke, the scorched trees nearby, the way the fire never spread beyond the property line. Each one of these hints builds suspense while keeping the central question intact. The unexplained fire also serves as the first breadcrumb in a larger pattern. Even if the audience doesn't know it yet, this isn't a one-time event. It's the beginning or the continuation of something older, more calculated, and much darker. And starting there, in that moment of senseless destruction, allows everything else in the story to be framed through that initial sense of dread. If one fire is horrifying, then the realization that it's happened before and will happen again is something else entirely. This is how you bring your audience into the world of the Merrick Curse, not with answers, but with smoke, silence, and something burning where life used to be. Vivid imagery of destruction is what takes the story from a report to an experience. It's not enough to say a house burned down. The audience needs to *C* it, feel the heat, smell the smoke, taste the ash in the back of their throat. Describing the fire in visceral, sensory-rich language creates atmosphere, but it also gives the event a texture that makes it impossible to ignore. Every crackling floorboard, every ember floating through the air, becomes part of the narrative's rhythm. And the more intimately the fire is described, the more unnatural its presence begins to feel. What turned the Merrick name into a shadow, and why did their homes vanish so completely? Keep watching to uncover the truth. You might begin with the smell, not just smoke, but something sweeter, stranger, like scorched sugar and bone. The kind of scent that clings to your clothes long after you've left the ruins. Then there's the silence that follows, not the silence of calm, but the kind that feels like everything has been erased. No birds, no wind, just the faint hiss of something still smoldering beneath collapsed beams. Even the ashes have weight, swirling through rooms where laughter used to live. The fire doesn't just destroy objects, it unthreads the life woven into a home. By focusing on specific objects, singed lace curtains clinging to cracked windows, a child's shoe half melted near a crib, a dining table still set for a meal that was never eaten, the horror becomes deeply personal. These aren't just ruins, they're remnants of routines, of lives that were being lived right up until the moment the flames arrived. Nothing screams. Nothing resists. Everything is simply gone. The house itself becomes a character in its final moments. Walls groan and buckle like they're mourning. Chandeliers drop with a violent crash that sounds more like grief than destruction. Time feels warped, too fast, too slow, as the fire moves with an intelligence that no one can explain. And by the time the last ember fades, what's left is not just loss, but a haunting. A space where something happened, and yet nothing can be proven. This level of detail not only immerses the audience, it implants a lingering discomfort. Because if fire can behave like this, can erase a family without reason or mercy, then what kind of force are we really dealing with? These aren't just house fires. They're something else entirely. And with each description, the fire becomes less of an accident and more of a presence. One that isn't just burning wood and wallpaper, but something much harder to name, something rooted in blood, in silence, in history. The Merrick name should be introduced not with grandeur or exposition, but with a kind of quiet dread, spoken as though even saying it aloud risks calling something back. There's something eerie about a name that seems to follow disaster wherever it's found. When it enters the story, it shouldn't arrive with facts or family trees, it should slip in like a shadow, just noticeable enough to make the audience lean in. Maybe it's found written on a charred letter pulled from the ruins. Maybe it's etched into the blackened stone of a mailbox, the only thing left standing. However it appears, it should carry the weight of unspoken history, the kind people in town whisper about but never explain. How did the fires follow the Merricks across centuries, and what escaped the flames? Stay to explore the eerie pattern. The name Merrick needs to feel cursed even before the audience knows why. Not because of what's been said, but because of what asterisk hasn't star. You can imply that others recognize the name, that it turns conversations quiet or makes officials uneasy. Maybe it shows up repeatedly in fire department logs, attached to addresses now long gone. Or in brittle, yellowed newspapers sealed in plastic, reporting on blazes no one could explain. Over time, that name becomes less a family and more a warning, something people have learned to avoid, or pretend they never heard. There's power in restraint. Don't list the whole lineage. Don't give the full scope of the tragedies right away. Let the name hang in the smoke-filled air a little longer, unanswered. The more the audience wonders why this family keeps showing up where disaster strikes, the more the tension builds. You want them to start connecting dots on their own, even if they're wrong at first. That's the tension between mystery and dread when a name doesn't just represent a group of people, but a pattern, a history, and something far darker than coincidence. When the Merrick name is finally acknowledged within the story, it shouldn't feel like a reveal, it should feel like confirmation. The audience doesn't just learn who the family is, they feel it. They feel the weight behind the silence, the unnatural calm that follows every fire, the way no one ever seems to survive or speak afterward. The name becomes inseparable from the event, like the match was never struck by chance. And from that point forward, every time the Merrick name appears, it comes with an expectation, one that smells like smoke, tastes like ash, and ends exactly the same way. Fires tied to the Merrick name didn't just happen once, or even twice. They happened again, and again, stretching across time, geography, and logic. That kind of repetition demands attention. Because when destruction follows a bloodline from century to century, without mercy or pause, it stops being tragic coincidence and begins to feel like design. And the more you pull at that thread, the more tangled it becomes. You start to see that these weren't isolated events, they were chapters in something much older, much colder, and somehow still unfinished. What made the fires so precise, and why did they spare the land around them? Don't miss the next chilling revelation. The unsettling part is how scattered the incidents seem on the surface. An estate burned in 1811, a colonial home destroyed in 1864, a farmhouse in 1909, a suburban house in 1953, a townhouse in 1987. Each in a different town, even different countries. Yet in every case, the fire starts the same way, late at night, without warning, in homes occupied by a direct descendant of the Merrick bloodline. And each time, it's total. No survivors. No remains that speak. No possessions left to explain anything. Just blackened timbers, cracked stone, and silence. The timeline itself becomes eerie when laid out. No two fires occur too close together, there's always just enough time for the memory to fade, for the next generation to feel safe again. It's like the curse, or whatever it is, waits patiently, lurking just beneath the surface of normal life. And when the next Merrick settles down, buys a house, starts a family, it returns. Not with spectacle, but with certainty. With purpose. This cross-generational pattern also breeds fear in the gaps. You begin to wonder who was spared, who never had children, who died young from something else and, in doing so, escaped the fire. The silence between the tragedies becomes as loud as the events themselves. Each generation doesn't just carry the weight of their name, they carry dread. Whether they speak of it or not, whether they believe or not, somewhere deep down, they know, it's coming. The fact that these events spanned so many decades makes it harder to dismiss. It's no longer a fluke. It's not bad wiring or coincidence or one deeply unlucky family. It's something that endures, that remembers, that waits. The story isn't told in fire alone, it's told in the way each Merrick built a home and didn't live long enough to pass it down. In how every trace of their history ended not in memory, but in smoke. And how, despite time moving forward, the fire always finds its way back. Total loss isn't just the outcome of the fires tied to the Merrick family, it's the defining trait. With every incident, nothing is spared. Not the people, not the buildings, not the artifacts that might help piece together the truth. Everything, every scrap of history, every fragile remnant of a life lived is consumed. And what's left behind is less than ruins. It's absence. It's the ghost of something that can no longer be studied, touched, or even mourned properly. In most house fires, something survives: a cracked photograph, a scorched wedding band, a half-burned journal. But not here. Not with the Merricks. What erased every Merrick record, and why did the fires leave no clues behind? Stay to uncover the hidden void. It's the eerie consistency of this total erasure that sets the story apart. In some cases, the fire didn't even spread beyond the property line. The grass outside remained green. Nearby homes untouched. Firefighters would arrive and find a single home burned to its bones, as if a heat-seeking force had descended with surgical precision. No collateral damage. No trail. Just one family, always the same family, reduced to soot. And not a single soul left behind to tell the story. What makes this even more unsettling is the repeated loss of documentation. Family records destroyed. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, wills all gone. It's as if someone or something wanted not just the family itself erased, but any evidence that they ever existed. Even public documents seem to vanish after the fact. Census records misfiled. Newspaper clippings missing from the archive. Photographs never recovered. The Merrick name flickers through history like a match that never quite catches. And each time you think you've found a thread, it burns up before your fingers can close around it. There's something deeply unnatural about that kind of precision. Fires that leave nothing useful, nothing human, nothing intact. That level of destruction doesn't feel random. It feels personal. Intentional. Like someone wanted to scrub the family clean from memory. No graves to visit. No homes to restore. Just addresses that people forget how to find, and stories that neighbors refuse to speak of. Even the artifacts rumored to have survived, the grandfather clock, the heirloom locket, the family Bible, are always part of a whispered contradiction. Some say they were seen intact after the fire. Others insist they were never found. They flicker through the lore like false stars, giving hope to those desperate for answers, but vanishing the moment anyone looks too closely. And so, the curse becomes harder to trace, harder to fight. Because you can't confront what leaves no trace behind. You can only fear it, and wait for it to come again. When fires repeat themselves across centuries, across countries, and across every generation of a single bloodline, time itself becomes part of the horror. The Merrick fires didn't happen in one cursed house, or even in one cursed town. They followed the family like a shadow that never aged. What started as an isolated tragedy in the 1700s became a disturbing pattern by the 1800s, and by the 1900s, something else entirely, a legacy. The kind of legacy people don't inherit, they survive. How did the curse track the Merricks across oceans, and what waited for each new home? Don't miss the next layer of doom. It's one thing to read about a fire in a dusty archive from 1811. It's another to find that a nearly identical fire took place 73 years later, in another home, in another country, with another generation of the Merrick family, and the same outcome. No survivors. No answers. Just fire, and silence. Time is supposed to bring understanding, advancements, logic. But in this story, time only brought more questions. More ashes. More names crossed out in forgotten family Bibles. There's something deeply unsettling about a mystery that doesn't age. Most curses fade into legend. This one doesn't. The Merrick curse doesn't weaken, it adapts. A fire in a candlelit manor in 1790 looks very different from a fire in a modern suburban kitchen in 1992, but the result is always the same. The family dies. The house is gone. And no one can explain why. It doesn't matter how far the Merricks moved, how much they modernized, how many precautions they took. Fire always found them. And fire always won. As each generation fell to the same fate, the timeline began to feel less like a list of tragedies and more like a ticking clock. A countdown. It makes you wonder how many Merricks lived with that fear, counting days, watching the calendar, waiting for the next spark. Maybe some of them tried to beat it. Tried not to have children. Tried to hide their name, change it, bury it. But somehow, the fire always knew where to go. Time didn't help them. Time only gave it more opportunities. And it's in that timeline, that long, slow unraveling of a family line, that the curse takes on a personality. It begins to feel less like an accident and more like something watching, waiting, patient, but precise. As if each Merrick household was being marked years in advance, the match lit long before the first flame was ever seen. Because when a fire happens once, it's tragedy. When it happens every generation, across time and space, it becomes a message. One no one's ever been able to read. Unsettling imagery is what allows a story like this to stick under the skin. It's not about gore or spectacle, it's about discomfort. Things that shouldn't feel wrong, but do. A baby blanket folded neatly on a scorched floor. A tea kettle warped in the shape of a scream. A doll's glass eye melted just enough to look like it's weeping. These small, strange visuals stay with the audience because they don't scream horror, they whisper it. And in stories like the Merrick Curse, it's those whispers that haunt the loudest. What warped the kettle, and why did the piano keys survive untouched? Stay to face the strange remnants. The fires are the central horror, but it's what's left behind that tells the real story. Not just the destruction, but the eerie stillness in the aftermath. Like the fire was careful, deliberate in what it chose to destroy and what it didn't. One investigator once described walking into a Merrick ruin and finding the piano keys perfectly intact, untouched by flame, while the rest of the room was nothing but charcoal and bone. That kind of image unsettles not because of what was lost, but because of what remains. When fire behaves in a way that defies nature, the audience starts to feel like it wasn't just heat and oxygen, it was something else entirely. Something with intention. Even outside the home, strange details gather. Neighbors reporting the smell of smoke days before the blaze. Dogs refusing to walk past the property. An entire tree line left untouched, but every bird's nest inside reduced to ash. Nature reacting without explanation creates an emotional unease that logical minds can't settle. And it's not just what people see, it's what they feel. Some locals describe a sudden pressure in their ears before the fires began, or an unbearable sense of being watched near the property lines, as if the air itself was warning them. These are the kinds of images that don't just tell a story, they suggest something bigger, deeper, older. The kind of horror that doesn't need to show itself fully because the audience already knows it's there, just out of frame. A scorched family portrait where only the children's faces are burned away. A calendar turned to the exact date of the fire weeks before it actually happened. A clock on the mantel, frozen at the same hour in every incident, even in homes with no electricity. These visuals are not evidence, they're echoes. Reminders that something was there, that it left a mark, and that it may not be done. Because when the strange becomes familiar, and the familiar becomes strange, that's when a curse stops being a story and starts feeling like a presence. Pacing is everything in a story like this. It's not about sprinting to the climax or dumping every terrifying detail at once, it's about letting the dread breathe. Slowing down just enough that every creak in the floor, every shift in the wind, every flicker of a candle feels intentional. When the delivery is slow and deliberate, the horror becomes more intimate. It creeps instead of crashes. And that creeping is what makes the story feel real. The slower it unfolds, the deeper it digs in. Not with shocks, but with shadows. What slowed the pacing of this curse, and why does silence follow every fire? Don't turn away from the creeping dread. You don't begin with fire. You begin with a room. Quiet. Undisturbed. Something is wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. That's the rhythm. A slow, steady descent. Instead of announcing that the Merrick family was cursed, you allow the curse to unfold piece by piece, like something being remembered rather than revealed. And every beat of silence carries weight. Every pause is a breath held too long. It mirrors the way trauma lingers, never screaming, just sitting in the background, waiting. Cadence matters just as much. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Each sentence should land like footsteps down a hallway, measured, soft, inevitable. You pull the audience in by whispering rather than shouting, letting them get close enough that they feel the heat long before the flames appear. The tone shouldn't rush to scare, it should hold the fear back like something behind a locked door. Suspense thrives in that hesitation. That restraint is also what gives the story its emotional weight. A quick retelling might deliver the facts, but it won't let the audience sit with them. Slower pacing forces them to live inside the details, the charred photo album, the empty crib, the half-written letter found in the ruins. These aren't just clues, they're lives, and when the narrative slows down to honor them, it becomes more than mystery. It becomes mourning. Even the reveal of each fire shouldn't be loud. No explosions. No chaos. Just the slow realization that it's happening again. The smell. The silence. The glow beneath the floorboards. That's how the Merrick curse should unfold. Not like a firework. What drove the Merricks to fear their own children, and how did they try to escape? Stay to feel the weight of their legacy. The idea of inherited trauma is key here. Each Merrick grows up shadowed by the memories of what happened to their ancestors, even if those memories are fragmented, distorted, or passed down in fear rather than fact. Stories told in fragments, old newspaper clippings hidden in drawers, conversations stopped mid-sentence when the name Merrick comes up. This inheritance isn't just genetic, it's emotional, psychological. The curse becomes a ghost that haunts their sense of self, a looming presence that dictates caution, suspicion, and sometimes despair. This inherited fear shapes choices too. Some Merricks have tried to escape it, changing their names, moving to distant places, avoiding relationships that might bring children into the world. Others have embraced it, hoping to break the cycle through knowledge or defiance. But no matter the approach, the curse shapes their lives like a mold, pushing and pulling in subtle ways. Birthdays are marked not with celebration, but with dread. Each anniversary of a fire is a reminder of the fragility that hangs over their family tree. Even those Merricks who live far from the flames are affected. The curse extends beyond geography, it lives in family gatherings filled with uneasy silences and eyes that dart away when certain topics arise. It lives in the way people hold their breath when a new generation is born, waiting for the inevitable to strike again. This shared anxiety becomes a connective tissue between them, binding them to a past none of them can escape. This psychological weight adds another layer of horror to the story. It's not just the fire or the destruction, but the way fear itself becomes a prison. Each Merrick is trapped, not only by what the fire has taken, but by what it has left behind, a legacy of dread, passed down through blood and memory, impossible to outrun. And in that silence, in that fear, the curse continues to live, quiet, patient, waiting. The attempts to unravel the mystery behind the Merrick curse have spanned generations, but every effort has met the same frustrating dead end, no clear explanation, no satisfying answer. Historians, investigators, and even family members have pored over documents, interviewed witnesses, and scoured every burned-down homestead for clues. Yet, the closer they get, the more the truth slips through their fingers, like ash carried away on the wind. What baffled investigators for centuries, and will the Merrick fires ever stop? Don't miss the final haunting question. Early on, some speculated the cause was structural, faulty chimneys, poor wiring, or careless accidents. But the fires don't follow any logical pattern. Some homes were brand new, equipped with the latest safety measures, others were old but meticulously maintained. There was no common source of ignition. No signs of arson. No evidence of electrical faults. Fire marshals could only report the same baffling pattern: sudden, intense flames with no identifiable origin, consuming the house completely and leaving no survivors. Supernatural explanations naturally arose, whispered in the shadows. Some locals spoke of a curse laid down centuries ago, a punishment from an aggrieved spirit or a consequence of dark deeds buried in family history. Others pointed to folklore, spirits of the land, restless ancestors, or an evil presence that hunts the Merricks. While these theories fueled fear and fascination, they provided no concrete proof, no way to intervene or prevent the next tragedy. Modern investigators introduced scientific methods, chemical analyses of the charred remains, forensic studies of the scene, but each report deepened the mystery. Unexplained accelerants, odd burn patterns, anomalies that defied conventional fire science. The fire seemed to behave as if it were alive, almost intelligent, targeting only the Merrick homes, sparing everything around them, almost as if the flames had a purpose beyond destruction. Attempts to trace the family's genealogy and historical records have been equally frustrating. Documents are missing, records inconsistent, and vital information lost to the very fires meant to be explained. Genealogists found gaps that could suggest deliberate erasure or just the passing of time, but those gaps only fueled more questions. How much was lost to chance, and how much was lost by design? Were the fires destroying evidence as much as they were destroying lives? No theory fully accounts for the scale, consistency, or specificity of the fires. The Merrick Curse remains an enigma, a puzzle missing its central piece. Each new investigation ends with more questions than answers, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. And so the mystery persists, cloaked in smoke and shadow, waiting for the day when someone might finally see through the flames to the truth beneath. Until then, the Merrick fires burn on, silent, relentless, and unresolved. As the shadows of this unsolved mystery fade into the past, the secrets of history await you. Subscribe now to Secrets of History, and join us as we unearth more chilling tales from the abyss of time. Hit that bell icon, and let the past whisper its truths to you next time.